Donna.
And I'm Michael.
And we're the Fechners. We're ordinary people. In fact, we're just teachers.
We've been led on an extraordinary journey. Life has presented us with some unusual opportunities over the past 10 years, as you'll hear on our podcast. And despite the risks involved,
we have embraced them all fully, and our glass is now overflowing with possibilities.
And we never know
what happens next.
So why not
take the chance?
Welcome back, folks, to another wonderful... This is episode 7, I think, Donna.
Oh, is it 7?
It's episode 7. No, it's episode 7.
Oh, my goodness.
It's episode 7 already. And what are you drinking this afternoon?
Well, to be honest, I'll drink anything. But today I'm having some Piper Heidsick, as we call it. But I think in France they call it Piper Heidsick. Just pouring it in.
Oh, it's good again. I love the bubbles the way we've got sun coming through the window here. You can see them sparkling. It's fantastic.
It's almost romantic. If I wasn't sitting here doing a podcast with you, God knows what I'd be doing after a bottle of champagne.
Of a Sunday afternoon, Donna, what better things to be worried about? What better things to be worried about?
Imagine.
Well, folks, you've joined us, as I said, on episode 7, and you've heard our story so far. Now, last week we left you with the book, Photos in the Attic, Donna.
Yeah.
A long journey.
Well, I think the whole thing is that we've been up and down and we reach these crests and then we drop and then we look at each other and say, is this all worth it? Maybe just go back to our normal lives, and we pack everything away and then something happens or someone says something or something out of the blue, a phone call, or it's just a word and we go, no, we've got to keep this going. So the book was a suggestion by Franco, actually.
Yeah, Franco.
The movie director. He suggested that maybe we needed to get the story out there in a different form. And this was during COVID too. So it made a lot of sense because Gold Coast Studios, etc., were all shut down and production was very difficult to get for the best of people, let alone two little Fechners living in downtown Brisbane.
Actually, David would have loved this.
David would have loved this, yes.
It would have been wonderful. And I know you did put a bit of a tribute in it in relation to David.
Yeah, David knew we were considering it before he passed, but he never got to read the finished product. But I think for me, the picture on the front speaks to me of David, and like I said, I'll be dedicating the movie to him when it finally gets up, and it will get up, I'm sure. So, yes, he would have enjoyed to see it in writing, in print. But Franco was very, very supportive, and we thank Franco for that. So
we mentioned last week the way our good friend George Petro from Melbourne had written The Art of Sacrifice and introduced us to Denny from Big Sky Publishing. So Big Sky embraced the book. We had a number of write-throughs, Donna, didn't you? You had, as we said last week.
I love how you used the word we. Yes, I did.
I read it and commented.
Yes, you do. You're very good at that. I think the hardest part was trying to
as we said last
transform it from a movie script into a novel scenario. There are parts that if I had plenty of time and I had to rewrite, I would select a few different setups, but it tells an ending that we mentioned last week. So for those people who don't go to the movie, God forbid, the book has the ending. So I'm pretty proud of it.
I think you should be proud of it, Donna. And look, the Big Sky people did a fantastic job.
They were great to work with.
They were great. The cover is beautiful. And Donna, you chose to write the chapters with a photographic title.
Yes, because the whole point of this story is the magic of these photographs of the lost diggers. So it was an homage to the Tuileries, to our beautiful Antoinette and Louis, to keep them in the mix, plus also maybe to broaden the audience. And I think photography is definitely a tangent from this story. There are so many tangents from this story, but the art of photography and how it has changed in 100 years and the importance that photos still hold for us sentimentally speaks volumes still. So I enjoyed researching photographic terminology as well. Always learning. I'm always learning.
And a lot of people have been, they've commented on that. Oh, Donna, we saw that, the chapter 15's got depth of field. How much of the image is in focus? You actually thought about it as you went through, didn't you?
Well, you should. You really should, Michael. So every chapter's...
Oh, you're funny.
Every chapter, whatever photographic terminology is at the beginning, has something to do with the unravelling of the story
and
in that chapter.
If people are deep enough to read that into it...
And I'm sure those of you who are listening are extremely deep, Michael.
But to have that extra little bit... And as I said, for people to comment on that, it was quite interesting.
Well, it was just another tangent. And
yeah.
I think it was something that we did talk about earlier in the piece with previous people in the teams about the presence of the photos and the importance of those photos. And we've yet to discuss those nitty-gritty details with the new team when the movie gets up, because I think the photographs do speak for themselves. The boys certainly didn't speak for themselves, and many of them had the 100-yard stare and were quite shocked and full of anxiety and PTSD when the photographs were being taken. So I think the photographs themselves are a story one by one as well.
Now we get to December 22nd, 2022, and that's our launch date. And so we decided we wanted to do something really, really good, because here we were, number one, coming up to Christmas, obviously. This is a great gift for somebody. But
we'd missed Armistice Day.
We'd missed Armistice Day, but we wanted to make a launch, something really special. So we had holidays. Neither of us are working out the holidays. So we thought we will make...
I finished off prep and did the report cards and all that sort of stuff. And
you were having a small rest.
A few little things early December. And I thought, what will I do? All right, I'll launch a novel.
Let's launch a book. So we thought, and with the help of Big Sky and a few others, we put together a bit of a program over December, January, when people are on holidays and having a bit of a break, to try to launch the book. So we started off with a gala evening in West End.
No, I have to correct you.
Oh.
Our first launch was in Childers.
Oh. Donna, I've made a mistake again. You've picked me up again. I'm sorry, the timeline.
Yes.
That's why you wrote the book.
Yes, that's why I do a lot of things, really.
So
it was launched in Childers.
In Childers.
With our friends Marianne and Ed at Vintner's Winery.
And mind you, it was quite special. They even bottled a special bottle of wine for us with lovely labels.
Photos in the attic labels. And when we went there, they had all these French flags lining the driveway. It's a beautiful little winery in Childers. Marianne and Ed are great people. We had, and it was important to launch it in Childers first, not West End.
No. In
Childers first, because the characters in the book, most of them come from Childers, and Childers has been so supportive of our dream to get this story
from the very, very start. They have been.
Up on the
behind
screen,
it.
And they will feature. And we would love, when the movie happens, to involve the Paragon Theatre up there and maybe launch the movie up there in Childers as well. So, and we hope to film in Childers with the movie. So Childers is important to us for lots of reasons.
So obviously the reason why we did go to Childers was to make that important step.
Yes.
And later on we'll find out that, Childers was important, but also Vignacourt was going when we had to try to work that in somehow, and that comes a little bit later when we tell you a bit more about that. But the Vintner's Day was just beautiful. We drank the wine, we heard stories, we told stories.
People ask questions, which is really important.
We had you sitting up on a lovely stool answering questions.
Yes, I'm very short, so I have to sit on stools. But maybe in one of these episodes of the podcast, we might have an open question session.
Yeah, get people to ask questions.
Because there are lots of questions, and lots of people are curious about their ancestors and doing research on military history.
And it's been an absolute delight, though, hasn't it, Donna, in so many ways.
I was just amazed. Oh. So we launched in Childers, and of course, anybody else who wasn't a first-time author, such as myself, would have done a national tour, but we chose a number of places that we could afford to go to
and
have a receptive audience who knew the story.
We knew that the Childers people would be receptive to it, and they, as I said, they came along. We had such a lovely day. We had a couple of signings in the middle of town, and a few of the shops, the museum, and a few others had it in town, the old pharmacy.
Yes,
and it was
thanks to Tim Bunn organising that. So
it was just delightful, and it was
lovely.
really lovely, and it actually felt, it felt good. It was a nice time of the year. The weather was beautiful, and it felt good launching this feel-good book in a place where the place was part of the story. So
a major part of the story.
It made it so good.
We launched at the winery and at the old drugstore, and then we called through Umundi and launched in the morning there on a Saturday morning during the market time, and then we came home to Brisbane, and
it was West End.
We launched in West End.
And it was time for the locals to come out then, and we managed to find this lovely little place in West End where we were able to set ourselves up. And again, a lovely evening. We had a lot of Brizzy people there.
A lot of family and friends too who have supported us all the way. So we're always grateful.
And it was nice to be able to, again, tell those stories there and have a different audience, and to know that the people that were there were so supportive and they loved it. A lot of people had already read the book. They knew the story from our tales over the last 10 years. So it was very lovely to actually have it for them to grab hold of.
And the bookshop that we launched, Michael's bookshop.
Yes, over at...
Stones Corner.
Stones Corner.
So we did a little bit of Brisbane, and then we
had radio interviews. We through George, we managed to find this lovely guy by the name of Sam Muscat from 98.9 Win FM in Melbourne, and he also has a bit of interest. He supported George Petro, and he had us on the radio a couple of times to actually tell the story, and it got it out to a different audience.
You were a bit peeved because he only had me first.
I got in there though, Donna. I did have my say. We talked a lot.
Yes, for those of you who know Michael, he doesn't sit behind the woman much at all. So I enjoyed the first broadcast, and then you invited yourself.
But that continued, and look, you did a couple of radio interviews. You did another one. I think there was a Bundaberg one we did, and then there was a Triple Z one we did back down here. And Sam kept a really interesting tab on us because he knew that in April, for the first time in 4 years, we were going back to Vignacourt. And
because of COVID.
Because of COVID, we'd been away and we hadn't been able to go back. So it was a great time to go back. So Sam followed our journey on that and allowed us to tell that story to a broader audience as well.
Yeah, and we had some giveaways, some book giveaways, and people were asking questions and we responded to their questions.
And George Petro, again, wonderful friend and supporter. We spoke with he and Franco and the team and we decided we'd have a launch in Melbourne. Because there was some filmy people in Melbourne, and this could be Sabella, our new producer, that had been David's partner.
Project. So Ultra Films and Real World Films
were involved. So we decided, and David Laird, who is a good friend or a friend of George's, offered his house in Melbourne for a very private affair where we had a whole lot of people. We had Lambert.
We had approached an RSL, but unfortunately at that time they were doing renovations and couldn't fit all of us in. So this
wonderful David from the RSL,
was a member of the RSL, and offered his home. And very kind.
And he was very
and his lovely wife.
He was very linked to the RSL in Melbourne and a number of stories and George's work. So we had this really intimate affair at his home in Melbourne. Where we had George, we had ex-Premier Ted Barlew, we had RSL members. Lambus Iglesias, who was the gentleman who has pushed and really promoted the Fromelles boys after they were being found. He was the man the finding of it. He is behind our story. So he arrived as well. And we had we were able to have photos of the Lost Diggers that we'd had allowed to be shown by Kerry Stokes and the War Memorial. So we had a lovely launch there. We drank some of that wine again from Vintners.
Yes.
Our Photos in the Attic wine. And it was a lovely evening. So Sam did another interview and we had a really lovely time. And, again, we felt that it was getting towards the end of January. we'd had a really good run at launches, hadn't we, in
Yeah.
Australia? The book was already out there. We'd had a lot of reviews. Some people had taken it quite well.
We'd called into some bookshops, and there's nothing more amazing than seeing a book that with your name on it on the shelves. So we'd drop into bookstores like Dimmicks and places like that, and just go up to the counter and say, I'm actually that person. And many of them offered morning signings and such. And then school came back, and we went a little quiet on the book.
And actually, you used to love, though, when we arrived at an airport and to find it at the airport bookstores.
Yeah, I was going to say that in the next few minutes when we talk about going overseas. Well, once again, not a great storyteller.
I think I am a great storyteller. I need to put it in order a bit more.
Yeah, you just get very excited.
I am excited, Donna. So we go back to school.
Yes.
And
the book
continues to sell.
Becomes available through Audible as well.
Yeah.
So Big Sky had an amazing lady living in London who came from Perth, didn't she?
Yes.
Or the Gold Coast.
Gold Coast.
And she read my book. So
and it's not too
that was an interesting process too, to choose what accent, like if I wanted somebody who was really Australian or someone who was a little British, and her rendition of the story was beautiful. So
it was very beautifully read.
Who prefer to listen to any books on, through an audio tape, Audible has a copy of Photos in the Attic if you wish.
And it's not too often that you get a book to be done like that. And Big Sky, again, they were really good to be able to allow it to be done with Audible, which I think was quite wonderful. It provides a different option, it's a bit different.
We went back to work knowing that we had launched across a number of places, and the book was selling.
And Vivian Carter, Donna, that's her name.
Is that her name?
Vivian Carter.
Which was one of those synchronistic things, because I used to call my mum Vivi. So when I wasn't sure about who to choose, that's... Like
but if you want a different approach, have a listen to it on Audible, because it is different to reading it.
Yeah.
And you can get a taste. If you get onto Audible, you can actually get a little sample listen to it. So it's worthwhile having a look at from there. So back to school we go.
Back to school, but we had planned to go to Vignacourt and to Villebretigny.
They were wanting us. They were wanting us back. They hadn't seen us for 4 years. The COVID had been. They'd had a barbecue. We hadn't had barbecues.
France had been hit really hard.
We joined them during COVID for their Vigna run and a few other things, but they really, really wanted us back. One of the mayors of the local towns had passed away due to COVID. There was a lot of sadness around that time, and the opportunity for us to go back for the first time in 4 years was truly wonderful. So we, with George and Zed Petro, we decided to go back, and also we thought we'd have a bit of a launch in Vignacourt.
Well, we had to, because it was just as important as Childers. So we always remembered what Anzac Day was like at Villebretigny, and sure enough, it was magnificent.
Oh, wonderful again.
We had approached them, but we always were very aware that Anzac Week is really, really busy for them. But they graciously accepted my book and put it out on display in their little bookshop. So I'll be very thankful for that too, because the whole Villebretigny setup there is amazing. The John Monash Centre is, when you go over, I'm not going to say if, when you go over there, it is a must-see. And around April the 25th, there's not just Aussies, but there's a lot of people who want to talk to Aussies. So we went into the little village of Villebretigny after the ceremony and went to the school, the Victorian school, where the original museum was before the Monash Centre was set up, and they took some copies of the book as well. So we chatted with people and told them the story, and open arms, and just accepted. We'd taken 50 books
50 or 60 books, yeah. A big
in
enough
our
fill up
bags,
suitcase.
which meant less shoes for me, but, things you do.
And they sold out straight away, and we were able to send some more. The mayor, I think Stéphane Dacrotoy, the mayor of Vignacourt, was quite excited, because here was something very positive they were coming back with.
The only thing was that it was in English, and I was very aware of that, and French speak English really well and read it even better. So they said, stop apologising, we will still buy it. So in time, I would like to see it in French to make it,
It would be
an
lovely.
even
particularly with the
situation.
setting in France and in Australia, that would make a lot of sense.
So the museum opened up its doors in Vignacourt.
Yeah,
and
a lovely day there. We had
we
had drinks there as well, champagne, and
you must.
We gathered with the teenagers who had come to Australia.
Yes.
Back nearly 10 years previously.
Took photos with them and just had lots of memory sharing, and it was lovely.
It was great.
As with everybody post-COVID, going back to a normal thing in your life is just so precious when you've had it taken away from you. So I left the museum with a number of copies of the book, and we stayed there for the barbecue.
And at the barbecue, there was a big event made of it.
Year.
They really, and it was so heartwarming to be welcomed back. I think, like we've always said, and those of you who know us know how special we hold Vignacourt. It's a special place that I think will always be, in our hearts for so many reasons. But going back there after that period of time was truly wonderful. And to have this book that there were people coming out of, just out of the blue that were asking for a copy of it, even though they couldn't read it, they wanted a copy of it because they knew that it had to do with their village. And I think, again, we come back to the fact that this is what the story's about. It's about their village and what happened there and the Australian stories that are part of it all. And that will never be something that can go away.
For me, it's on the spot where the story took place.
Yes.
So to have that honour, to be there just telling a story, it's not my story, but just telling someone else's story on their behalf is such an honour. And that's all we've ever done with this story. And it just so happened that one evening when we were in the museum, which is beautiful because the Australian government worked really hard to convert the barn into the museum. Yeah. You looked out the window.
I looked out, yes, and I saw a shadow pass by the old Tullier house. And I said to Valerie, I said to the director, Valerie, who's a good friend of ours, I said, is there other people here tonight? And she said, no. And
God, I love your French accent.
I'm convinced it was Antoinette in a long flowing white dress that walked past. And to this day, I will swear that it was. I saw through that window and I saw it. So I think Louis and Antoinette, and I think we've said, you can feel them there.
Yeah.
You can feel them there.
And I hope they're happy with the story that we're trying to tell people about because it's their story.
Because it is. And as we said at the very beginning, Vignacourt and the Tulliers and their story is one of it's the key to this. It's the hero of this story, and we really want that to continue. With George, Donna, we were lucky also that George had painted a couple of really, really beautiful paintings, and he wanted to commemorate them while we were there, and we were fortunate enough to be part of that. Yeah, accompany him.
And his beautiful wife said.
The first one was one of the in the collection, a gentleman by the name of James Dillon. We think he is maybe the first Aboriginal that has been identified.
We think, but research is difficult in that situation because of the records. So Valerie and George worked together.
Valerie worked really hard to come up with it.
James's story, and George, we went to a
local village not far away from Vignacourt where they celebrated him on and around Anzac Day. And
because he's buried there.
He's buried there, but he was in the collection. And that's one of the other links that we're trying to put together. These guys that had their photos taken, many of them came home, many of them were buried elsewhere. But if we can try to put together where some of them ended up, some of them were unknown, that makes the story even better, doesn't it?
Well, I think it just says to them, we acknowledge your courage, we acknowledge what you did for the freedom of everyone involved, and we thank you. And you may have been forgotten for 100 years, but there is time, and with the joys of research and technology these days, it's much easier to find out information. But there's nothing more satisfying than when all the pieces fit and you get the answers to the questions.
And they came out again. The village came out to commemorate this man that is buried there.
Yeah.
A big deal. Channel 7 were there to do the story on him. It was a wonderful day to commemorate not only the Lost Diggers collection, but this gentleman, James Dillon. And more will be done, I'm hoping, to work out if he was in actual fact Indigenous. And because we know the story of the Indigenous diggers is a very critical part of your book and the movie, isn't it?
It was an area I wanted to highlight of their bravery and perhaps the difficulties that they faced on returning after the war. So that was important.
Yeah.
And we'll always support George. George is an amazing guy and a wonderful artist, and he has been there for us, and it was an honour to be there for him on that day.
And also on that same trip, he had another painting of someone who he had come through his connections. He's got a very wide set of connections. A gentleman by the name of Malcolm Chisholm. Now, for those of you who don't know, Malcolm Chisholm was actually the first Australian to die in the First War, the Great War, but he died on the 26th of August 1914 before Australians were even engaged. He was actually embedded as a British soldier, and he died in the Battle of Ligny and is buried in the small village.
And we went to his grave, and his family were there, and lovely story in that his mum missed him so much that she had her ashes sent over to be interned with his body. In this village. But it's just incredible. All these stories, they're all amazing.
And we hope that every time we go now that we can actually tell some of these stories, because some of them are well known, but a lot of once we identify them, if we're able to tell the stories, it makes it come alive and be real also. So the story of Malcolm Chisholm was just a wonderful story, and for people to know that, and I think he came from the mountain region between Victoria and New South Wales, up in the snowy type region there, on the border. But great story. Malcolm Chisholm and James Dillon were the two guys that we were able to commemorate as part of that story. Now, Donna, there was one other soldier also that holds a special place in your heart.
Well, after the Vignacourt visit, and yes, we called into a few places on the way home, as you must do with that large flight, and I'd go into the airport bookstores, and this is what you were alluding to, say, 28 minutes ago, Michael, that I would find my book with my name, and I would consequently push all the other books off and just leave mine in the centre. So it was a buzz for me. So I was extremely thankful, extremely proud, extremely grateful, and we came home and back to work. Then,
well, Donna, look, I hate to tell you this, Donna, but I'm going to tell you that you're out of context here now too, because we went and visited this guy's grave before we came home.
Yes, but I'm talking about the death.
Oh, before?
We knew that Roger had fought in Fromelles, and his name is on the wall there. But
we're speaking about Roger Coffey.
Caughy.
And he is a relative of Donna's. He's actually a cousin of Cameron John Mackenzie.
Cousin, and he's my great grandma's sister's son.
We found
his Lambus, really. Yeah. Lambus started talking to us about Roger, and
we found out just by blue that this guy was actually related, and all of a sudden Donna had another relative, and we know that it's very difficult, and we've put his details up on our website, and there's some information there about him, but he died at the Battle of Fromelles. We're not sure whether he got back to the lines or whether was buried, but he could be one of the 60-odd that are still waiting to be found. And
so one of the joys was to talk to Lambus, because he's such an amazing man, and he said Roger's body is there. And so he said approach people, start to ask questions, and it just so happened that yesterday I received a DNA kit
from the Australian lost
Fromelles, those
casualty.
Researching in England, those researching the bodies found in the latest pit there in Fromelles, and they've asked me to
because Donna, on the maternal side,
they have a paternal sample,
but they need two samples to clarify it. And we went and saw his name. His name is on the VC Corner Memorial. And we know where the Battle of Fromelles was, and we know lots of Red Cross records about him, but we're unsure about what his outcome was. Lambus believes that he may be one of the ones.
So yesterday took DNA, and hopefully I will find out that we can bury him there, and I will definitely be there, and I will definitely tell my family, and hopefully we can go and honour
And
him.
in July next year, it would be a truly wonderful thing.
July the 19th is
the Battle of Fromelles anniversary. It'd be wonderful to go and commemorate him and have his name put on a headstone and know where he is. And again, Donna, from those soldiers that appeared at the end of Alicia's bed, we have another one.
We have another one. And I can't believe that putting a cotton bud against my cheek and rubbing it on a pink piece of paper and sending it all the way to London is going to line up with his bone structure or his chromosomes or genes from another part of his body that they've taken out of the ground. It just mesmerises me. But what an honour to think that 100 plus years later, me, who didn't even know of his existence 4 or 5 years ago,
can have something to do with identifying him.
Could be answering a question of his existence now.
And to go back to the Western Front, to the battlefields, to know that Hurahan's there, Mackenzie's there.
So we have one on the Menin Road who hasn't been found, and by God we will find him. We've got one that is buried, and we've got one that is supposedly buried there and will be interred in the ground. So we've had a selection of beautiful
Don't forget Michael over in the German cemetery.
The German side too, absolutely. So this whole story is just unfolds. So the book has been a huge chapter in the development of the story of the movie. So we moved sideways, we went on a different tangent, but we're still taking the chance.
And why not?
They will all tie together, and we will have it all up on the screen very soon.
Yeah, so very soon. So look, thanks for joining us again today.
Yes, it's time for another
Have that
drink.
other wine, and look, join us next week again. And look, what I might do is I might ask you, we'll send an email out, but when you listen to this one, send us some questions of what you'd like to ask us next week, and we'll give you an opportunity to ask those questions, and we'll answer them.
And I'm sorry, Michael is married.
Donna, I love you dearly, and now that I know that you've got 3 relatives that are part of the Western Front story, of which is so much, who would have known when we got married a number of years ago?
You lucky little boy from Toowoomba, you lucky
who would have known? Because although one of the Ryan family are on the
yeah. Okay, we're at the end of the episode.
Okay.
Next time,
guys, take care. Why not take a chance? Au revoir.